anybody know anything about Virginia Woolf?
No.
It's so interesting. Sometimes I have classes where like almost all the hands go up because she died in a very famous way.
How?
That's why I asked. Well, it's also a funny thing. I'll say something like that. Like, she died in a very famous way. Anybody hear about it? No. Maybe it's not so famous then.
It's infamous.
It was infamous. She wrote. Oh my God.
Did she die from
Whenever
poison?
you're in a sad mood, don't Google her. She committed suicide.
Oh.
And she committed suicide.
Like Marilyn Monroe?
No, she actually had some dignity in class. And she was a real writer. She and had talent beyond just appearances. But she took rocks and she stuffed them into her pockets and she walked off into the river and she drowned herself. She didn't just jump in the water and say goodbye, cruel world. She jammed rocks in her pockets to help weigh herself down.
Goodbye, cruel
Yeah.
world.
She gave herself concrete feet. She gave herself concrete feet.
Yeah, she gave herself concrete feet. Yeah, it's about model.
Guess I did rock her world.
That actually might be the best thing you said so far.
I think so, yeah.
I knew if I gave him enough time, something.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for it.
But the thing about it, she wrote, again, the reason I say not to Google it from the sad music, she wrote one of the most heartbreaking suicide letters you'll ever read in your life.
Oh, it's better than
She writes to her husband. She went through a period of schizophrenia, it seems. That's what we probably think it was. And then she came out of it, and then she felt herself going back into it. So essentially, she writes a letter to her husband, a very loving letter. It isn't like the world has been so cruel to me. It's nothing like that. She says something to the effect of, I find myself falling back into the madness, and I fear we won't survive it this time. We, not just me, not just you. And so she's doing this because she wants to spare him, because he took care of her the whole time that she was suffering from this. She was trying to spare him the suffering of having to take care of her if she fell back into the madness. And in her mind, of course, is she ever going to come back out of it? Who knows? And so it was out of a deep love for her husband that she did this. Now, of course, do you think if you ask her husband, do you think he would sit there and say, for the best?
Well, I tried.
Do you think he's glad that she had committed? No. If you ask her husband, would you rather have her with you, even in the madness? Or would you rather have her dead? Of course he would choose to have her with the madness. But she took that choice away from him by taking it herself. It's an ironic thing that people who do that would think either one of two things. Either like, I'm so angry at the world, I'm going to kill myself. Well, if you're angry at the world, you think the world's going to care? And if so, in other words, if you're angry at the world because you think the world doesn't care, then why would you do it if you think the world doesn't care? Because we're not thinking rationally. Or because we want to spare loved ones. But of course, you're not sparing loved ones. You're making things infinitely worse. You're leaving a very deep hole.
You make me feel like it's their fault. You're given the reason to regret.
Yeah, and that's what happens. The people who don't care about you are gonna go, and then they're gonna make jokes and send memes about you.
Yeah.
And then the people who do care about you, you're condemning them to a lifetime of wondering, what could I have done? Why didn't I? And of guilt and self-blame. So there is no positivity to it in either direction. By the way, I know lots of people who have done this. I've had students who have done this. It's one of the reasons I hate that. Have you guys seen that show, 13 Reasons Why?
No. I've heard about it.
Yeah.
It's
a terrible thing. It's about a girl who commits suicide, but in short, it sends this really awful message, which essentially, so she commits suicide and she leaves these tapes explaining why she did it, condemning people. I did it because of you. I did it because of you. And then throughout the show, she gets to appear in ghostly form and see the effect that it has. In real life, you don't get to do that. You don't get to walk around in ghostly form and see what happens. In real life, once you do it, you're gone, and you leave a deep hole. The people who don't care about you are justified in their belief. See, we knew there was something wrong with them. The people who love you, of course, are left with this deep hole of, God, why didn't I see it? Why didn't I do something?
Yeah.
There's no positive, there's no outcome.
It brings like more.
A friend of mine committed suicide that way. She was inside of a bathroom, and her boyfriend was outside the bathroom. I knew both of them. And she was inside, and essentially he broke up with her. And then he's telling her, I love you, but there were just problems in her life, long story. And then he said to her, I love you. And she's like, you love me? And he said, I do. I love you very much. I love you very much. And then she shot herself. Like she was just waiting for that last bit of affirmation. Now, what do you think his life is like?
Horrible.
Right. And then, of course, as he's sitting there, he's like crying because he hears the gunshot go off, and he fidgets, and then the door opens. She locked herself inside the bathroom. He has no idea why didn't the knob turn earlier. if the knob had turned earlier, he could have saved her life, right? Well, did he try? I don't know. Who knows? Because when you're in that grief and that panic, maybe he forced the door open and doesn't remember. Maybe he never tried to open the door, but he's now left with that grief in his life.
Yeah.
The rest of his life, why didn't I just turn the knob? Of course that wasn't going to save her life ultimately, but in his mind now, that one person she cared about in the world is carrying that grief around with him for the rest of his life. And I talked to him maybe a month ago, and this happened
Recent.
6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. And
Oh.
he still carries this with him every day and hasn't been able to move on with anything in his life. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure like around that moment, I felt like he was feeling a bit hesitant of the situation. Like his kind of figure out something, but he really couldn't think about what to do. He could have done this, but at that moment, they were feeling mixed feelings about something. Like it's good and positive. It's really like you said before, like with the person like, oh, I'm a comedian, we'll say a joke, and then they're just left on the spot, and they couldn't really say much about anything.